This is a ball of yarn, and I know you folks at home might be asking, oh boy, what can it do? Well, it can make clothes, a blanket, and a Yoshi game for the Wii U. Please don't leave. Yoshi, what a great guy. He helped Mario in that one pretty good game. He helped so much that they made the sequel all about him. And if I'm being completely honest, this is one heck of a game. It had such great levels, Yoshi was fun to control, and the bosses were loads of fun. This will always be considered one of the greatest SNES games ever made. I can't wait to play Yoshi's Island DS. Looks the same, plays the same. It has to be just as amazing. It wasn't. It felt more like a filler game than anything, and none of the gimmicks really grabbed me. By the end of it, I was kind of just begging for the credits to roll. I wouldn't say it's a bad game, it just didn't feel worth playing. But what about Yoshi's New Island? Yeah, what about it? This game's just another Yoshi's Island DS. Neither of these games offend me, I just prefer if they didn't exist. But enough about Yoshi. I'm here for Wario. Goodfeel is a third-party Japanese company that just happens to make pretty great Nintendo games. Their first notable title was Wario Land Shake It. And can I just say how great of a game this is? The levels are shockingly spectacular. The soundtrack rocks, and the game feels really good. Oh! They would also go on to make Kirby's Epic Yarn, some Street Pass minigames, and... Wait a minute, I don't know WePlay Motion. But most importantly, they would eventually make Yoshi's Woolly World on the Wii U and Yoshi's Crafty World on the Nintendo Switch. Woolly World doesn't have much of a development history, but Crafty World was delayed till 2019 after being scheduled to release in 2018. Believe me, I would know. And to get this question out of the way, I think that both of these games are great. But I have my preferences. These games have similar positives, but usually one of these games succeeds where the other fails. So I'm gonna try to do my hardest and explain which of these two is the better great game. Both of these games succeed in bringing up great levels with plenty of variety. Crafty World especially throws several course gimmicks at you, with none of them getting stale or old. One minute you'll be breaking down boxes with a hat, and the next you're being chased down by the skeleton of a T-Rex. The amount of variety in these levels is beyond incredible, but I still like the levels of Woolly World a bit more. Woolly World might not have as great of a variety as Crafty World, but it makes up for it in the amount of fun I have with the levels. Both of these games are pretty easy, but the more moderate difficulty in some of Woolly World's special stages make it a bit more interesting to play through. Not to mention that all of the levels have this certain flow to them that Crafty World doesn't provide very often. Again, both of these games have great level design, but I prefer Woolly World's more. It's Crafty World. It's not even close. Woolly World doesn't have any real gimmicks. It's closer to the original Yoshi's Island than anything. And that's not bad, but Crafty World has such great gimmicks that it puts Woolly World to shame. Crafty World has such an immense variety of great gimmicks that I can't even talk about a third of them. But one of the gimmicks I'm not a huge fan of is the flipping mechanic. It just feels like a way for the game to get me to play the same level twice. More on that later. But everything else is so cool. I already talked about how most of the levels have their own cool gimmicks, but there are also some special stages, and really anything could happen in these. You could be on a jungle train, shooting down animals and targets, riding a giant Yoshi mech, or even racing a solar-powered car. All of these levels are shockingly well done, and all of them are really fun to play. I'm just surprised they don't have one where you're killing Oh, thank God. The only thing that Woolly World has that is similar to these are the transformations that happen in a few levels. And they're fun, but not too prominent, and I don't blame Woolly World for not having these types of stages. It was going for more of a pure gameplay style, and that's fine, but Crafty World should definitely be commended for what it brought to the overall experience. Both of these games have their fair share of collectibles, but only one of them is a paint 100%. So let's talk about Woolly World first.
It has three main collectibles.
The smiley flowers, wonder wool, and stamp patches. The smiley flowers help in getting special level in every world after all of them in that world are obtained. The wonder wool is pretty great as well. Netting all of them in the level gets you a new yarn Yoshi pattern. And these are a great addition in the game, as there are tons of patterns you can go for. There's cow Yoshi, chicken Yoshi, and even... oh my god. Now I do have a bit of a problem with the stamp patches. It's not that they don't help, they get you a stamp for Miiverse, which is pretty neat overall. Oh, never mind. But I really just don't like where they hit some of these. It gets to the point where I'm able to say I'm not ashamed of getting a guide to help me get a few of these guys. Overall, I'd say most of these collectibles are pretty great and make me want to scour the levels for secrets. Crafty World, maybe you want to ignore the eviction notice. But Mom, there are just way too many collectibles in this game, and it made me not play the game for a year out of boredom and spite. The smiley flowers return, and they're now required to pass to the next zone, which was a fine enough decision. I was already gonna hunt them down, but sure, whatever. But now there are also extra smiley flowers obtained by beating the stage with all 20 points of health, getting 100 gold coins, and getting all 20 red coins. You also have to go backwards through the stage to hunt for Poochie Pups in a specific amount of time if you want to get more smiley flowers. And then you'll have to hunt for these little trinkets in the back of the stage to net another smiley flower, and a lot of these stages have two of these. But then, after you beat the game, you can search for these little box guys in every stage to get you a special costume. And oh yeah, the costumes! You're going to want to get a bunch of coins so you can purchase all of those as well. Is that all? Other than the boss challenges, yes. Wait a minute. What time is it? Getting everything in Crafty World isn't that hard to do. It's mostly just a test of patience. And I can finally say that after 2 years of owning and playing this game, I did it. Am I proud of that? No. To complete this game, you have to play each level at least 4 or more times, and it didn't make the game more fun to play. It honestly made it a bit worse for me. I'm gonna have to give the point to Woolly World. Now, Woolly World has some pretty great tunes. Almost all of the tracks have a pleasant feel to them, and they're all very appealing to the ears. It doesn't top the original Yoshi's Island soundtrack, but it's some pretty great stuff. Can't say the same about Crafty World. The soundtrack goes for the Yoshi story way of remixing the main theme over and over again into different settings. This is why you should never go the way of Yoshi's story. It isn't a bad soundtrack, I just like more variety. Take it back. These two games take a similar approach to bosses in both their philosophies and design. The key difference between the two is that Woolly World's bosses are preceded by an entire level, while Crafty World just has them on the world map. Now the bosses themselves are all brought upon by gimmicks magic, and all of them have these animations on how they're being made, but if I'm being honest, Crafty World does a way better job at these. In Woolly World, it isn't a huge part of the boss itself, but in Crafty World, you can see all the fine details like how Baby Bowser attacks you with pencils, and these obstacles are just rulers, and the Tin Can Conqueror is made out of a can. I never would have guessed. This may seem rather small, but it greatly increases my enjoyment of the bosses themselves. And while none of the bosses in both games are particularly difficult, they still make for enjoyable encounters. And speaking of difficulty, after you beat Crafty World, you unlock the boss challenges. These are fun little reasons to go back to the bosses you've already beaten. The challenges are to beat the boss within a time limit, to not take any damage, and a specific boss mission like hit the meteor with the hammer or break 2 or more alarms. Again, it seems really small, but it makes a difference when I realize I probably wouldn't go back to Woolly World's bosses if I didn't have to, because there'd be nothing else to do aside from defeating them again. Or you could go to the boss tent to fight a harder form of that boss, but all you have to do is defeat them, and it's not nearly as fun as the boss challenges. So while these games handle the bosses rather equally, a few things put the ones in Crafty World above the ones in Woolly World. Now, if you're going to talk about these two games, the beautiful art styles of each will definitely be brought into the conversation. Woolly World goes for a yarn-made style that looks simply incredible. It also interacts with the gameplay, as you'll be collecting yarn to stitch Yoshis back together, as well as throwing yarn balls at enemies. It's a great overall aesthetic to go for, and I think they pulled it off wonderfully. But Crafty World goes for a style where everything looks like it could have been made with real craft materials. And surprise, surprise, it also looks amazing. Everything in the game looks real. Except for Yoshi. He looks a bit weird.
It's like what I said about the bosses.
The small details are what make the experience so much more enjoyable. Every object is fun to look at, especially from behind, where all the incomplete details of the craft project are visible. So, as for which one I like more, I'll take the one with jelly beans. Now that these games are 3 for free, this is gonna have to end in a tiebreaker. Which one has more side content? Neither of them have side content. But we still need something to break the tie. Something marvelous, something extraordinary, something... Oh. This'll do. Poochie and Yoshi's Woolly World. Oh boy, I wonder what they added. So, in this game, there's now a new side mode where you can play a little game about running and collecting beads as Poochie. It's fine.
But more importantly,
the game lets you make your own Yoshis, and I think that's pretty cool. I love getting the designs of different Nintendo characters on my Yoshi by tapping an amiibo in the original, but now you can make whatever Yoshi you want. That alone makes this game worth playing. So, yeah, Woolly World wins. So, Woolly World is a bit better than Crafty World. But that doesn't mean that Crafty World isn't one of the best Yoshi games. That original Yoshi's Island has still gone undefeated, but Woolly World and Crafty World come really close to it. If Woolly World had Crafty World's gimmicks, bosses, and art style, it would be one powerhouse of a game that could definitely rival the original Yoshi's Island. As it is though, these are just two really great games that I'll probably never forget about. They're way better than these two games ever were. Well, I'm glad you didn't leave, folks, because now we're going to be looking at the history of cookies, all the way from its humble origins in 7th century Persia to when it was made for a Yoshi game on the Nintendo Entertainment System.